Hello, and welcome to another episode of Inside IP, Bird and Bird mini podcast series by the International IP Group at the firm, covering all things IP. I'm Ram from the London office, and I do all things marketing and BD related to support our wonderful team. And this week, we're gearing up to World IP Day. I've managed to grab some time with one of our experts, Richard Dissmann from the Munich office. But more importantly, founder and frontman of Bird and Bird's IP band. That's right, the IP All-Stars. Welcome, Richard.
Hi, Ram.
Thank you for joining us. I guess one of my first questions, which I haven't asked you before, is really how the hell do you manage to run a successful IP practice and lead a band?
With players and singers like yourself, it's so easy to manage the IP All-Stars. So really still focus on the day-to-day work as an IP lawyer.
And I've assumed you've always played in a band, but have you ever sort of written your own stuff? Have you ever gone down that road at all?
Yeah, sometimes, although nothing of it has ever really been sort of published on record or been particularly successful. Sometimes I like to do that rather sort of as a fun thing, but it was never supposed to be my daytime job, or I would never want to make really any money.
Especially when it comes to music. And I remember having music classes at school and being asked to compose things. And inevitably, when I would create things, they would often sound like things you've heard before, because obviously I'm drawing inspiration from what I listen to, what I like. I personally wouldn't say it's directly copying, but where do you draw the line? And I guess that sort of leads us into copyright element of music creation.
Yes, absolutely. And to give you a lawyer's answer right away, where do you draw the line? The lawyer's answer is, of course, it depends. And that's how we always like to answer clients' questions. But then, of course, we explain it. And it depends on the level of originality of what you've created and also of what has already been out there. And I think if we want to sort of make the bridge to copyright, that is what copyright is about all the time. It's about sort of the existing body of prior art and how your creation compares against it. And indeed, in music, I think it can be particularly difficult to say how new and how original does it have to be, because as you know, there's only so many notes. So at some point you will inevitably come up with something which has been out there more or less in a similar way before.
Exactly. And I guess in terms of judging that, especially when it comes to litigation, judges aren't necessarily musicians. They might be, I don't know. But I guess from a legal perspective and in terms of what you do, I assume it's pretty difficult to sort of prove that.
Yes, and it's always not only a matter of evidence, but it's also a matter of discretion and whether you think it's similar enough or too similar or different enough. And indeed, the judges usually, they have all sorts of interests, but not necessarily be music. So if you want to explain a case which essentially is about music to a judge, either you are lucky and he has some interest and talent in music, or if he doesn't, then you have to explain it to him. But this is what the litigator's job is all about all his life, explaining complex cases and complex situations of life to judges so they understand. So yes, that's the challenge.
I remember we had a discussion previously about sort of cultural and geographical influences. And I wondered what your thoughts are in terms of the difference in different types of music around the world and sort of the ease in which copying can occur in terms of sort of sequences and structures and all of that.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, as many cultures as we have in beautiful wild worlds, so many musical styles and musical cultures we have. And if you listen to music that you're not so familiar with, let's say from the Arabic countries, you might say, hey, this all sounds pretty similar to you because you're maybe not so much used to their scales or their typical chord sequences or the typical instrumentation. Whereas maybe with the Western music that you listen to every day on the radio, you're much more familiar with it. So that, of course, also coins your perception of whether something is similar or not similar, or whether it is something is copy of something that has been there before, or whether it's just reminiscent of, or whether it draws inspiration of. I mean, when we make music, like when we make any new creation, we always build upon what we've learned before and what we've heard or seen before, and then, come up with something which we hope is our own creation. But I mean, there's so many examples of also songs which were thought to be original creations, but maybe the guy who wrote the song overheard a song on the radio without even noticing like 2 days ago and then came up with something very similar. And music history is full of these examples.
It made me think about Bollywood music, actually, and Bollywood films, particularly because they sort of follow the same structure. And so more often than not, you can sort of think, I feel like I've seen this before. I feel like I've heard this before. And they may be slight variations on different storylines or different songs, but there's a slight difference, but they work. And that's why they appeal to the masses. And I guess that's the reason why popular music can sometimes feel like it repeating itself a little bit, because they are just tunes that sort of really impact and people love them.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, a fine example is the blues scheme, which is a 12-bar progression of chords, which is always the same in every blues song. And there's zillions of recordings which follow these 12 bars, which always go in more or less the same progression. But there are so many great songs which have that same chord progression and which still are super distinct of each other and which are very original. And I think the same goes for many other types of cliches, if you like. You know, they are popular because they are great, make many different songs and many different original works from the same sort of recipe.
And unfortunately, I think we're coming to the end. So I just had one final question and point. I wanted to find out from your perspective, do you think we're going to get to a place where we are surrounded by AI generated music?
Yes, I mean, this is one of the questions that comes up all the time between musicians. There is AI generated music, and it's actually pretty good, I think. But I dare say that I always or almost always think I can tell whether something has been generated by AI. And to me, the human created, genuine stuff always sounds better, goes more to the heart. We'll see how it goes, but I think there will always be humans making music.
Perfect. Thank you, Richard. Thank you for taking the time to chat with me today and sharing your thoughts and insights.
Thanks, Ram.
So stay tuned for more IP related podcasts, or follow us on LinkedIn at Bird and Bird IP to keep you up to date with all of your content. We must be a godsend for AI, considering how much we push out there. If you have any questions, we would love to hear from you. So feel free to contact us via email at intipmarketing@twobirds.com. Until next time, keep innovating and protecting your creations.